So from the last time, we have a few follow-up topics.
Mhm.
First one was mostly documentation related. I haven't looked at this yet, so I think I'll look at that soon. And Eric is, I think he said something about being unavailable for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Which is normal considering the time of the year.
Yeah. And he also had his MacBook or computer in for repair, I think.
Ah, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then the other thing was the Imba course for next year.
Yeah.
Which you've talked about a little bit, and we also talked about it before.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm really looking forward to starting with it. I think we are close now with Imba 2. It is still, there are still some bits missing, but mostly it's just stuff crashing, that we don't have enough tests for the syntax, since we have changed up quite a bit and used this this opportunity to actually clean up the grammar and the lexer and several parts of the internals. So there are still quite a few inconsistencies in the syntax and stuff like that, but it is coming together. We've moved a lot of things over to ES6 now, which is nice. And yeah, so now I jumped onto the Imba V2 status immediately. But we are going to start planning the course early in January, I think. And hopefully, I'm not sure, maybe we should, instead of just thinking that we are going to release a huge perfect course, like a big course after a few months, then we could also consider first getting Scrimba, Imba 2 to work on Scrimba, and then just create a few smaller casts. So we could create a tiny series on event handling, for example. We could, yeah, we can come up with all sorts of ideas. So one of the things that are much better in version 2 is actually the event handling, like the structure of how you chain the event modifiers and call functions and stuff. That's getting really, really great. And the test suite is also, I'm today going to push quite a few more tests for that, so that you can see in the examples, but it's going to be very useful.
Nice.
So now it is close to the stage where we can start looking into rewriting some of our stuff in Imba 2. And as you suggested last week, we are going to also write some new tools for Scrimba and GitSpeak separately in Imba 2, just to battle test it. So yeah. What do you think about course? Do you have any thoughts on that now?
No, I don't have any. Like I was thinking, it would be better to instead of doing a big course and then waiting for a long time, it would maybe be better to have a living course, where like instead of planning out everything and making everything, and then there's a release date, and just make here's the playlist. Yeah. And here is one playlist, and then just fill that one up. And then here's the next playlist, and then fill that one up. Yeah. And then we actually would have content to tweet on Twitter and post on Spectrum and in the chat. Yeah. So if we made like, here are all of the new stuff, we could cover some of it in the Imba changelog thing. Yeah. And then we could do deep dives in the course.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, but I'm not sure how the course should be laid out. Like, should we focus on introducing simple, small concepts, or should we try to make big examples and then show you example from start to finish?
That's a good question. I think the latter is very useful for a lot of people. But there I also think that that's one of the places where Imba or the what do you say, the ecosystem around it needs some work as well, because in a larger sort of example application, we also need to integrate with some sort of data layer, and we should either get to the point where we pull out the data layer from GitSpeak and open source that and use that, or we need to just create a nice example of how to use Apollo or maybe even just Firestore or something. But these are things we need to decide along the way. But I totally agree that we should do a lot of small bits in addition, at least, and talk about and do some walkthroughs and fun examples in the Imba changelog that will hopefully start up for real just after New Year's. Maybe we should just schedule the first date for the next Imba changelog, and then have a goal to make Scrimba compatible with Imba 2 before that date.
Yeah. So when do you think is a good time?
Let me see on the calendar. Maybe let's see, first week of. Maybe we could try the 6th of January. Then we have like, so basically right after the next community meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could do it the 3rd of January. And then have, so then that we have it created it before the next bi-weekly. What do you think?
I'm not sure I understand. So do you want to get Imba 2 working by then, or do you want to start on a course by then?
The thought was making Imba 2 work in Scrimba by then.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that would be good, so you can actually try it out.
Yeah, and it will still probably be rough around the edges and have more breaking changes in the weeks ahead. But as long as it works okay and that we can continually make it work again, then it's better than nothing, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And also we can start locking down any more syntax changes.
Yeah,
because then it's actually being used on Scrimba.
Yeah. So most of the kind of syntax changes I'm working on now is more just cleaning up the syntax that is there and then making sure things don't break. Because I'm not sure if you really dug into it, but the lexer we have and the rewriter are just insanely complicated and messy. And over the years, so Imba hasn't been in development for, is it 10 years now? I don't remember, but there have been a lot of mess introduced into the code base and not cleaned up, etc. So we have so many concepts just littered all over the place. And it feels good to use this opportunity to at least fix some of that.
Yeah, that sounds good. But isn't the lexer from the JSON project? Isn't it generated from the JSON thing?
No, so that's the thing. We have a lexer that first goes through the files and like tokenizes everything, and then it sends it to the JSON parser. And the JSON parser is generated from the grammar file, the grammar.imba.
Okay.
And that's not that messy, but that also contains quite a lot of concepts that we don't use and that we should get rid of. But the main thing is the lexer and the rewriter that are really, messy. And so like yesterday, I had to basically change a lot of things there just to support, to make sure some classes and event handlers and stuff on tags worked. And it's there's so much stuff there, but it's getting cleaned up.
Nice.
One of we briefly touched on that before, but one of the big remaining challenges, I think, for Imba now as well, but especially for the next version, is the tooling. So I haven't worked on the VS Code plugin for a long time, so the highlighting won't be very good, and there's no auto-completion. There's no like good error reporting. Even the reporting about like inconsistent indentation isn't even showing anymore in Sublime text with Imba 2. So there are things that must be worked out there. And I was hoping that maybe I can introduce you to some of that, and maybe you can do some of the work on the tooling.
Yeah, that sounds good. I could do that. I was hoping Frode would do some stuff on the VS Code thing, but I never managed to get him to do anything really. I tried asking him a couple of times.
Yeah,
and he seemed to be busy on his free time.
And he's traveling now, so I think probably won't be easy to get him to do big changes. He has done some changes that I haven't merged in, so I should do that first. But yeah, I think the tooling, you kind of convinced me that tooling is pretty important, and you showed me a lot of cool tooling for Vue and other projects. And so I've always been using the Sublime plugin, which obviously then has gotten the most love. And that's been good enough, I think. It has even contained like jump to definition for tags, quite a lot of handy things. But when you now look at, especially when you look at VS Code, which most people are using, and just do a TypeScript or a JavaScript project, and then an Imba project, you see that the tooling with JavaScript is just so superior that it's not even a, it's almost a joke. Like it's really, really good. And I don't think we should aim for JavaScript level tooling, but I do think we can expose a lot of the same things that the JavaScript tools have.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we also discussed before, maybe we could reuse some of the JavaScript tooling if we generated output it understands.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. That will be most helpful if you, let's say you write the JavaScript file and then require a Imba file somehow. Then we can at least compile it in the language server or in the worker and just give that to VS Code. Then all auto-completion and type inference from the Imba file will be exposed to people requiring that from a JavaScript file. But the ideal would obviously be to have that power inside of the Imba files directly. Because it shouldn't be that hard, I think, but it is a big project. And already Imba 2 in itself is a pretty big project. So, and I don't have limited time, so it would be very helpful to have someone who could help out with that and really make it a priority.
I can take a look at both VS Code stuff and the Sublime stuff.
Yeah.
So just to see, like, I'm interested in the VS Code for personal reasons. But
yeah, I think Sublime is the most, like, Sublime I have a pretty decent overview of. And I think Sublime is getting less popular. So I do think at most we need to get the Sublime plugin to work as well as it did in V1. But it would be nice, again, if maybe both of us, I know you love Vim and will probably always return to that. But there are some Vim bindings and stuff in VS Code. It would be fun if both of us just forced ourselves to use VS Code for Imba for a few weeks at least. And then along the way, try to improve the plugin so that it becomes bearable for us.
Yeah, sure. I have no problem with that for a few weeks. That's fine.
Yeah, cool. What else? We talked about one thing I looked at yesterday again is whether we should now start requiring parentheses when calling functions always, like even when you have arguments, or not. It's kind of possibly it's difficult to take that discussion here without having a playground where we can scribble on it. I'm not sure. Do you think we should talk about that now, or do you think we should just wait with that for some time?
Could you repeat it? Like I was typing something while you
Yeah.
were speaking.
Whether we should, it would be interesting to have like a short syntax discussion regarding whether or not to require parentheses for calls, even when you have arguments. But I think, so it is okay to just leave it like it is now. But if we eventually decide to, make arguments required, then we can clean up a ton more stuff in the grammar and the parser as well.
Yeah.
But as long as it works now, it's better to just, there's no reason to start ripping up.
Yeah, because what you're talking about is like this. So either console log 1, 2, 3, right?
Yeah.
Or console log 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about right now. Yeah, I don't know. I prefer the one here, but I've written this style so many times because the code I'm looking at usually has this style.
Yeah.
Then I'll just write it in that.
So I kind of agree. I do, on my older days, I've started to appreciate the latter one. And if it wasn't for some specific scenarios, I would opt for the last one, like going for explicit braces, parentheses. But this becomes a bigger problem when you start talking about like functions where you also include a callback, like a do block after the function. There are some cases like that where it starts to get awkward with parentheses. So that's the thing I feel is difficult to decide.
Yeah, and I think you can also end up with some really like you can end up with bugs if you try to using that style in a conditional statement.
Yeah,
you can generate code that if you mix like here I have parentheses, here I don't.
Yeah,
then you can really end up with something that does not match at all.
Yeah.
I don't have an example right now, but I've seen a bug where I've written code exactly like that, where I have some parentheses and then some not.
Yeah.
And then the conditional statement ends up being wrong because of the functions and how they're wrapped.
Yeah. So it's much it's much easier to introduce bugs when you allow calls without parentheses, especially when you have complicated arguments. Since in Imba, everything is an expression, so you could just write hello and then a space and then a whole for block, for in something, and then that is transpiled into an expression that is an argument of the function. When you start with these things, it does become quite unreadable, kind of like not unreadable, but it becomes difficult to understand what the compiled output will really be, and that's pretty bad in the case of a programming language.
Yes. Yeah. So I think maybe this is something to ask to the rest of the Imba community, because I really don't. I get the confusion and the ambiguity when you mix them up.
Yeah.
But I would I wouldn't mind enforcing parentheses because, but I also think it's really nice if you have a very simple function or a method and then you're just writing one line or two lines, then it's nice to just be able to drop the parentheses.
Yeah. So maybe we should at least initially don't change it, but maybe change like all the code we write in the compiler and in the runtime consistently use parentheses, at least. And just leave it at that for some time, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to be affecting people, but with the tooling changes, it should be you should be able to change it really fast.
Yeah.
So are you going to change the analyzer output to add even more information, or do we have like adequate information now in the output?
I don't think it's adequate. It's decent, but I think we should expose a lot more, and especially when to include like good auto completion and things like that in VS Code, we will also probably need to use the token output, like not just the analysis output, but the output of the token stream to see where one block starts and ends and things like that. And I do think we need to add more tests I think there are a lot of subtle bugs now that aren't showstoppers for running code, but where the tokens have like slightly wrong location offsets related to the file, where the tokens don't have location. Some of the tokens are generated, so they don't have location. I think there are quite a few things like that. As you saw in the sentry logs for Scrimba, then there are definitely problems with source mapping, and that should also be a priority.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should definitely, it would be very cool if you could, we'll look into it together and I can show you what we have already. But you started looking into Monaco now for Scrimba and the internals there. And it would be very cool if you could take the lead on the VS Code plugin and maybe
sure.
Imba language server if and when we are going to make that work.
So but isn't there already a Imba language server, or are we just implementing parts of the protocol?
I think we're just implementing parts. Like, we're not following a huge protocol thing. We're kind of just hacked into some of the things the VS Code can respond to, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be fun, and I also have an example on exactly what I want to build. So
yeah,
I was thinking of do you know Kahoot?
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of papers, a big stack from some other tests.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of if I just re-implemented like a Kahoot tool, but instead of it being exactly like Kahoot, it would use my own format, which would be like a markdown type thing, where if it reads that file, it will generate a quiz.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, it's going to be input forms, multiple selection, but mostly input forms. So you'd get the question and you would actually have to write out the answer, not multiple choice selection.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that would be fun. And I was thinking of, instead of building it from as a desktop browser view, I would start with the small canvas, 320 by 480, and then just implement one thing after another. Yeah, I can use VS Code for that.
That's cool.
And I think that should take a few days just to write the format, parse it, and then render all of the views.
Yeah.
And then track progress, like you've answered X number of questions and so many are correct, and then retaking the quiz.
Cool. Yeah. What else? For some follow-up topics, I think now I'm ready. I've been working in private on version 2 for a very long time. So now I think it's probably time for me to at least start posting the things I post in notes, like the discussions I have internally with myself. I ought to start posting them as issues, even if no people read them. I should, before the next meeting, I could start today, like publishing a few issues regarding the remaining things of V2. I see you posted quite a few issues where you just prefix them with V2. So the people can follow along more on the progress and partake in some of the discussions. Like, one of the things I wrote down yesterday as a draft issue is, this is just an example of a small thing that we need to consider, but should we keep the yes and no aliases to true and false? Like, some people probably have input on that. We could just, for now, keep everything like it, but I think some of the things make sense to to revisit. Do you have any particular meaning about that? Like,
I think it would be nice to reduce the number of syntax changes so we don't break stuff too much, and then follow up, because like what I'm worried about is like if we add more and more things or take away more and more things, we can introduce bugs. So it would be like nice to focus on the topics. So like what's the main goal of the to release, instead of trying to get everything right. So with regards to the Boolean values, I think it's nice that you're able to write yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't have any, it's not something that I think is like a big issue. I think it would be like if you consider like the migration steps, like the more syntax changes you make, the more you're adding to a migration thing. And of course, those could be handled by a tool. But I think it would be nice to like restrict the number of
changes. I kind of see.
It's adding overhead to the person who's writing code.
Yeah. At least it's adding overhead to the people who migrate code from V1 to V2.
Yeah, but developers who are writing, not that there are that many, but the ones who are actually writing Imba code, they're gonna have to change. So, and any syntax changes is change on their side. So they're gonna have to think different. Like I can't write that, but actually I think the yes and no isn't really that big of an issue, because you could just write yes equals to X and so on, and then just you've implemented it basically.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Is that all for today, or?
I'm just gonna prepare the next time, and then we can go through everything again.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be a new year. There. And this is gonna be heading 2. Let me double check. Heading 2. And then let's just change this to agenda. And actually, there. And so the documentation, I don't think this is so important right now. We can come back to that with regards to the documentation. And it's better to discuss it again later with Eric.
Yeah.
So maybe, maybe we should add a point there, discuss documentation plans. And then status on running Imba 2 on Scrimba. So are we going to start planning the course in early January, or what are we going to do with the course? Like,
I think we should like start planning it in January, and then we have to see when we can start releasing content from it, but at least also get the Imba changelog started and do that at least weekly. Would be very cool if I managed to get the next version of the casting format ready so that we can actually join in together in a single stream, but that will probably not be in the first week of January. So until that, we will just have to sit on the same computer and talk.
Yes, and I think that's fine for Imba changelog. If you want to delay the course for that, then we could just wait for the course. Because we could focus on just like covering. If you remember the course pages on Scrimba, they're basically separated into modules. So we could like just have a draft, a high-level draft of here is one topic, X number of screencasts. Here's another topic, X number of screencasts. Like teams. This is the team for this. And we could just group them as playlists. So create draft of the Imba v2 course. And then what else? Let's see. So you're going to do another Imba to status. Maybe we should put that at the top.
Yeah, for the next run, yeah.
Yeah, and then the VS Code stuff.
Yeah.
VS Code. And I can start on that this week.
Yeah.
VS Code changes. So you said you could, if I wanted to publish a VS Code version.
Yeah.
So I need a key.
Yeah.
Are you going to send me that key, or can you send me an email with all of the details?
I'm not on my computer now, but I can. We need to look into how. I think you need to create, or you probably have one already, but your own Microsoft Marketplace account or something, and then we need to link them up somehow. I don't think you can use my token because it's directly connected to my account, but I'm sure we can be multiple people administering the same plugin.
Yeah, I haven't used the VS Code Marketplace other than a consumer, but I have a Microsoft account for other Microsoft products.
Yeah.
So cool.
So you could maybe try to create and look at the VS Code plugin that is already out there, and just also to get the publishing working, maybe just create a small extra plugin yourself and actually publish it, just a tiny one. Then you can go through the whole process there.
Yeah.
Because I think, anyway, since we have both Imba 1 and 2, it makes sense for a transitionary period to probably create a separate VS Code plugin for Imba 2. Especially because of the syntax highlighting, the error reports from the compiler. If you write Imba 1 code and have the Imba 2 plugin running, then that will be very annoying. So we need to find a way to either let people just choose which of the plugins they use, or maybe let them install both and then just use Imba 2 as a extension for now or something to have that plugin work with Imba 2 files. We'll need to figure out that.
Yeah, or we can use a configuration file. If it says, we'll just read the package JSON, and if we see that it's a specific Imba version, do this or that. I don't know, like, I'll just look at Imba 1 and then I'll start with Imba 1 and then move gradually over to Imba 2. And then just see what happens. Like, and maybe at the same time, I can also update the Vim plugin, because it has some issues, like syntax highlighting just stops working after a while, and so on.
I have no idea how you bear working in Vim with that tooling, but yeah.
But so the VS Code thing, and then so VS Code changes and language server. Let's see what else. And you're going to talk about the analyzer output, right?
Yep.
So there's going to be some changes on that. And then better source mapping. Do you want me to look at the source mapping, or because I was under the impression this is on the loader side, but
no, it's actually the source mapping is generated from the compiler.
Okay.
But somehow it is transported. To be honest, I don't understand. Like, when you use all these bundlers and transpilers and everything, it somehow manages to transport and retransform the source map a bunch of times into a final file. But so it might not even be on our end that the source mapping is failing, but and it might even be just for the Sentry stuff, for the server side Scrimba stuff, that it just doesn't even use source mapping. So it maybe just shows you the paths in the compiled JavaScript files. So that's one of the things we also need to look into. But yeah, I know at least that I have been sloppy with not marking we have a lot more source mapping information that we actually expose. So you have all these tokens and they have locations in the files. And in the compiler, when you actually transpile to JavaScript, you make explicit choices about which tokens to mark and which to skip. And right now there are probably a lot of room for improvement by just marking much more things, basically.
Nice. So, okay, but then we can get back to that later.
Yeah.
So the other thing is the notes. Like I was thinking maybe if it's not too much work for you,
yeah,
maybe you could publish them as blog posts somewhere. Is that something you're open to?
Yeah, so probably not the notes I've written, and that's just because they're just chaotic. There's not even a structure to them, but there are maybe, yeah, some notes have 4 lines, some notes have a long list of pros and cons, some are just work lists. But I could at least, that's not a feature in GitSpeak now, but you could at least read them and get up to speed on that. But I would need to write blog posts to make something that's worth publishing.
Yeah, I was thinking like one thing that would be interesting, like, is because we've been talking about it a couple of times now, and we were talking. I was telling you that I think 2020 is going to be the year of Svelte.
Yeah.
And I was thinking maybe we could, if you wrote a blog post or a Dev2 post on like what you think is going to make Imba better for the next year.
Yeah.
And just drill down on the feature set, because the web component stuff, that's not something I thought of, for example.
Yeah.
I think that's, I think I heard on YouTube someone saying that 2019 was going to be the year of web component.
Yeah.
But it turned out to not be the case. It has had adoption. So maybe 2020 is going to be also the year of web components. Yeah. So I was thinking maybe, is that something you could look into? Maybe write this is what I think is going to happen with Imba in 2020. It is,
but as you've taught me to set the expectations, I think like writing things like that takes a lot of time for me because I'm not an especially good writer, and I tend to procrastinate on it when I have other like more pressing things like finishing up Imba 2. So I don't see myself, realistically, I don't see myself like sitting down and today I'm going to spend like the whole day trying to write a blog post about something that is just not finished yet.
Yeah, but that's the point. Like you're not writing about something that has happened. You're writing about something that can potentially happen.
Yeah.
So this is like, so it might be totally off and totally wrong by next year. Yeah.
I can see if I find the time or inspiration. I think it's more likely that it would happen if I just talked with you about it and you wrote a blog post. But we can at least put it out there as an idea. I did write the blog post about the benchmark for Imba 1, but it took a lot of time, like much more time than it looks like. And,
yeah, I see.
So yeah, I don't want to commit to that and then just be stressed about not doing it.
No, it's fine. It totally makes sense. I was just thinking, since you already have a lot of notes and you're in the mindset of doing Imba 2 currently, might be interesting to try to think about the future. And but yeah, I guess it's work.
Yeah.
Cool. So the last thing was this, which we didn't do. You helped me with running the tests, so I can actually run them now.
Yeah.
I was having the issue with the dist directory.
Yeah, that is an issue we haven't resolved yet. That we should do that because many people run into that if they try to join the development. Like I've had to remove the dist directory a few times myself.
Yeah. Why don't you just make it a part of the clean step?
Yeah, I can do that. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that then, because I think I tried running the clean thing also when I was doing it myself.
Yeah.
So
makes sense to add it to that.
Yeah, cool. I'm getting hungry, so
Yeah,
I have to eat soon.
it was
Is
a good meeting,
Yeah,
productive.
yeah, good talk. And then we also have follow up. I didn't add any names here
Yeah,
because whenever I do that, it's going to show all of my contacts, and I don't want
yeah.
that.
Ah,
But I know this is me, and then mostly the other stuff is you. So
yeah,
cool, good talk, and then see you soon.
yeah, definitely. Talk to you. Bye.
Bye.